Glory to Jesus Christ. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. O heavenly King, Comforter, Spirit of truth, everywhere present and filling all things, you are the treasury of blessing and the giver of life. Come and dwell within us, cleanse us of every stain, and save our souls, O gracious one. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. It is a real pleasure to be in your beautiful country, in your beautiful city, in this beautiful hall with you beautiful people. And I am going to be sharing with you some of my thoughts on the internet in general and pornography in particular. And lucky for you, I am very opinionated on this topic. So what I thought I would do is deliver rather a short address, maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then spend more time answering the specific questions that you had in mind. Whenever the roles are reversed and I'm sitting down there, I always find the questions and answers much more interesting. Well, I grew up in a small country town in South Australia. There were 16,000 people in the town, but it was surrounded by acres and acres of farmland. The next city was an hour drive away, so everybody knew each other. And the childhood I had, though I probably didn't appreciate it as much as I should have, I do now. It was a very safe place to grow up, and my parents would allow me and my brother to ride our bikes all throughout town. And the only rule was we had to be back before it got dark. Now, my cousin, Sarah, who lived in the big city of Adelaide, was not told these things. It would have been highly irresponsible if my auntie had have told my cousins, just ride your bike throughout the dangerous city, just be back before it's night. The point is this: the environment in which we raise our children ought to influence how we raise them. And with the advent of the internet, as you know, the dangers of the big city, as it were, have come into our towns and our houses, and indeed into our children's back pockets through the smartphone. So it seems to me that we have two options as parents, or those who may one day be parents. We can do something different or nothing different. We can raise our children the way our parents raised us, without concern for the internet, because they didn't know what the internet was. We can do that, or we can do something different. And I would submit that the vast majority of parents are taking the former option. They're really not doing anything different. And yet, with these dangers, has resulted in many negative effects for children. So it seems to me that we have to do something. And so I'll share a few things that I think we should do with our children. Now, some of you are parents, some of you are big brothers and sisters or aunts or grandparents, and so I suspect that this should help you. The first thing we have to do is educate ourselves about the destructive nature of porn. If we really don't think pornography is a big deal, then we will not be as incentivized to help our children be free from it. But before I say a little bit about the negative effects of porn, I think it's helpful to say what the problem isn't. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. So let me tell you what you, if you're a good Christian, already know. The problem with pornography isn't sex, and it isn't sexual desire, and it isn't nudity. Sex, it turns out, was God's idea. In fact, it is the very first commandment we find in the Holy Bible. Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. When God said, "Be fruitful and multiply," he did not mean grow pineapples and invent calculators. I stole that from Dr. Peter Kraft. No, he meant have sex and have babies and fill the world. Sex is good. Sex is beautiful. The fact that you can make sex very ugly, I think, is an argument for why it ought to be beautiful. You can't make very ugly things much uglier. Like if I had a pile of trash on the stage here and went, look at it, and then I kicked it and went, now look at it, it's grosser. Not really, it's just the same, it's just gross, you know. You can make moderately attractive things kind of ugly, like me, I guess. You can make very beautiful things very ugly, like Lucifer. And so I think the reason that sex can be made ugly in pornography or different expressions is a roundabout proof that it ought to be beautiful. Nor is the problem sexual desire. Sexual desire is a God-given gift that should propel us to make a gift of ourselves to another. If you don't experience sexual desire, that's not a sign of holiness. It might be a sign that something's terribly wrong with you. Something needs to be addressed. Sexual desire is not synonymous with lust. Sexual desire, you might say, properly ordered, can wait to give. Lust can't wait to get. Sexual desire, properly ordered, is self-giving. Lust is selfish. Nor is the problem nudity. You know, if you walked in on somebody changing, the reason you would or should divert your gaze from them isn't because, ooh, gross. I mean, it might be, but that's not why you're doing it. The reason you're doing it is precisely because of their dignity. It's because there is a temptation to reduce a person to the body and the body alone. A sort of two-dimensional reduction. And we shouldn't do that. The fact that we can talk about degrading the body is proof that the body has grade to begin with. We don't talk about degrading paper clips and washing machines. Stole that from Peter Kraft too. Some of you are like, I have no idea who this Peter Kraft is. But we do talk about degrading persons. We do not have bodies, we are bodies. Imagine the absurdities that would result if you weren't your body and if I wasn't mine. When I kissed my daughter goodnight, I wouldn't actually be kissing my daughter goodnight. I would merely be manipulating the husk, which is not me, and pressing it against the husk, which is not her. Hugging would be like you getting into a car and me getting into a car and us slowly bumping into each other. We are our bodies, and our bodies have dignity, which is why when somebody objectifies us, treats us merely as a means to an end, bodily or otherwise, we feel as if a great violence has been done to us. And that phenomenological experience is prophetic of what indeed has happened. Okay. Now, I wrote a book a couple of years ago, or several years ago now, called The Porn Myth. This is a non-religious response to pro-porn arguments. I don't reference sacred scripture, the words of Christ. It is based on, I would say now, about 45 years of studies that have been coming out of academia, neuroscience and psychology and sociology, and all of it is saying that porn's really bad for us. Incidentally, to give this book a plug, I don't make a cent when you buy this book. 100% of the royalties go to help sex traffic victims in San Diego. There's a group called Children of the Immaculate Heart. So if you do get this book, you can get it on Audible and have a lovely English fella read it to you because they didn't like my voice. We can talk about that in Q&A. Or you can buy the book, but there's really a great deal of studies in here. It's meticulously footnoted for your plagiarizing convenience. But here are the things you may not know. Currently, unless we have now more, there are 59 neuroscience-based studies on addiction. All but one, so 58 of the 59 studies, lend strong support for the addiction model. That is to say, because addiction can be misused. What do we mean when we talk about addiction? We might mean it in a religious sense. Someone might say, addiction is what happens when you take your hunger for God to a mutable good or something. Or we could have a psychological definition, such as the inability to quit an activity in spite of adverse consequences and the desire to quit. I don't know, something like that. But then there are sort of neurological ideas of addiction. That is to say, if you think addiction is even possible, okay, and maybe you say, well, maybe it's possible with, I don't know, people who use heroin or something. Okay, so when I talk about these 58 studies lending support for the addiction model, what I'm saying is there are similar changes that take place in the brains of those who use porn frequently to those who are addicted to substances. We have over 50 studies that link porn use to sexual dysfunction, such as erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, the inability for women to climax who are addicted to pornography, or at least use it frequently. And at least 7 of these studies show causation, not merely correlation. Because in 7 of these studies, when the one factor of pornography was removed, people regained their sexual functioning. We have over 90 studies that link porn use to poorer mental, emotional health. You probably don't need me to tell you all of this, but it's helpful. I think that if you're pro-science and pro-love, you should be anti-porn. All right, here's the second thing I think we should do as parents, or those who are about to be. And I wonder what you'll think of this. I think you must talk to your children about pornography. And I would say from the age of 6. Why 6? Because I think it's at the age of 6 that a child usually gets access to a screen. And those screens usually access the internet, and the internet accesses pornography. Well, you might be thinking, how on earth would I talk to a bloody 6-year-old about pornography? That sounds like a terrible idea. Wouldn't I be scandalizing them? Wouldn't I be putting ideas in their mind that they're not ready for? Certainly that could be the case, and I don't think we should scandalize our children. I think that's a sin. But I do think we can talk to children in an age-appropriate way to prepare them for this internet landscape in which they live. So I'm going to tell you how to do it. And you tell me what you think in the Q&A. And by the way, if anything I say tonight you thoroughly disagree with, that's also fine, and you're welcome to state that later. So here's how I spoke to my child about pornography. He was 7, I think, and we were taking a drive, and by this point I was writing on the topic of pornography and speaking frequently about it, so I suppose it shouldn't have surprised me when my 7-year-old from the back seat said, "Dad, what's pornography?" But it did surprise me. I took a breath, didn't want to mess this one up. I said, "What's that, mate?" Hoping he'd forget, but he didn't. He said, "What's pornography?" Here's what I said, and I think this is something of a template for you to use. I said that pornography is pictures or videos of people who are showing parts of their body that their bathing suit should cover. Now, that may not be a sufficient definition for you, but it's sufficient for a 7-year-old. Pictures or videos of someone showing parts of their body that their bathing suit should cover. And then I said, and if you ever see this, and you might see it on a computer or in a newspaper or a magazine, someone might show it to you, you should always tell Mummy and Daddy. You might think you'd be in trouble, but we'd actually be really proud of you for telling us. Because pornography can hurt our brains and our hearts and our relationship with God. And he said, well, if it hurts us, why would people do it? Good question. And now I'm thinking of all the stupid things I do on a daily basis, even though I know they're stupid and hurt me. And I remember saying, well, you see that big building up there? He said, yeah. I said, if I jumped off that, that would feel pretty good, wouldn't it? He said, until you hit the floor or the ground. I said, well, yes, but you know, I mean, don't quibble with the truth. I mean, until I hit the ground, it would feel terrific, you know? Or you might use another example. You might say, well, rat poison is very delicious for rats, I imagine. That's why they eat it. That's how it's designed. And I understand that it's predominantly food, 99% of food perhaps, maybe slightly less, I don't know. But it's just enough poison to kill the rat. Well, pornography can feel exciting, but it actually hurts us. Something like that, I think, is a good example. That's fine. That's fine. If your child's ready to ask the question, they're ready to hear the answer. The reason I would say to talk to them by the age of 6 is you live in a culture that's continually inviting them to this thing. And so I think that's a good idea. What do you do if you catch your child looking at pornography? Your son, your daughter? Here's what I'd do. I haven't had this happen, and I don't believe it has happened. But if I found out that let's say my 15-year-old daughter, who's so cool and so funny, and you'd like her really a great deal if you got to meet her, maybe she'll be here later on. Suppose my wife said, I saw that this child has looked at pornography. What I would do is I'd say, okay, so tonight what we're going to do is we're going to get all the kids to bed, and we're going to have her stay up, and we're going to talk to her. And I'd wait till all the kids are in bed, and I'd sit her down, and I would apologize to her. It's not our children's fault that they see pornography. That's your fault. It's not your child's fault that they enjoyed what they saw. We're wired to find the body interesting. We're wired for sexual arousal. Our children didn't ask to be raised in a pornified culture. Our parents and their parents and us decided that that was an appropriate thing to do. So I think an apology is in order. I think I would say something like, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. It shouldn't have happened to you. And I want you to know that we're going to make some changes such that this doesn't happen again. But I need you to know that I love you and I like you, and there's nothing you can ever do to change that. You could try, but you would be unsuccessful. Something like that, you know. Because I think when people view pornography, they just feel like awful human beings. I was thinking even tonight, when we were laying out the different problems of pornography and how many hours, and I thought about those of you in here who watch pornography. Let me just preach, just for like 120 seconds, and then I'll stop. You should never, I'm going to just preach at you. That's what's about to happen. So just defenses up, whatever you need to do, but it's coming. Never be afraid of your own wretchedness. Sometimes, especially, I don't know, for me, as I grow older, I run into parts of my personality that terrify me. I run into the consequences of my sin and stupidity that I don't know how to make sense of. I don't know how to get around it. I don't know how to go through it. It doesn't make any sense. I don't see what good could come from it. But I think that the good Jesus is the only refuge big enough for your wretched, poor, awful little black heart. And it is bad. You suck. You're awful. But that's okay that you're awful and I'm awful. Jesus is so good and he's so kind, and he isn't scandalized by your sin. He doesn't go, oh me. He knows why we do the stupid things that we do, and his name is Savior. So surely it's a delightful thing for him to save you and me. That's his name, that's his job description. So there you go. So if you're a man or a woman in here tonight looking at porn, wanting to quit, you're beautiful, I love you. Listen to me, your sin is the least interesting thing about you. Whatever, that's great. But so there you go, I've said that. But I think our children should hear something like that as well, you know. All right. Now, maybe you're here tonight and your children are older. I've done preaching now, that's finished. Wasn't very good, was it? But. And maybe you've never spoken to your older kids about pornography. Maybe they're 16 or 18 or 21 or 44 or 86. You'd be very old. How would you even begin to bring this subject up? Here's how you do it. You say, listen, tonight I heard a talk from this very handsome Australian. You don't have to laugh that hard. All right, I heard this talk from a Australian fella, and he was talking about pornography, and it occurred to me that I've never really brought that up with you. And I just want you to know that if this is something you ever struggle with in the future or that you're struggling with now, I hope you know I'd help you. And suppose they're 16 or something. I promise you it'll be the most awkward conversation you'll have all year. But that's okay. Why is that a problem? Lean into the awkwardness. Awkward's the new black. I love awkward, clearly. I love it. Just press in. There are things worse than having awkward conversations. You know, I stumbled across porn when I was 8. My best friend's mum bought me and my friend pornography when we were 12, 13. I never spoke to my parents about it and didn't want to. But I wonder if they had have said to me something like that, hey, if you're ever over your head with this stuff, I know it can be addictive and harmful, let me know. We'd be happy to help you. I may have never gone to them, but I may have. So I think you could say that. All right. Third thing I think we should do. Delay the smartphone for as long as you absolutely possibly can. There are many reasons to hate smartphones. If pornography didn't exist, my 15-year-old daughter who doesn't have a smartphone still wouldn't have a smartphone. I just think it's a great way to increase anxiety and depression and all sorts of negative things into our children. So just delay that and then find friends that are also on board with this idea and hang out with them. I want my daughter to learn how to journal, not wonder which filter makes her face look better on Instagram. I want good daughters, solid, mature, interesting children, not shallow, boring children. And yes, this is a false dilemma, but I do think they're more likely to be shallow and boring if we give them unfiltered internet access. So that's what I think. You don't have to agree with me, but you'd be wrong. That's fine. If you're going to give your child a phone, then, well, there are many good parental controls now. That's not a good reason for you to get a phone for your child, but I do think that it's like my daughter is, when she's 15 next month, I think the first thing we'll do is get her what's called a Gab phone, which I'm sure works here somehow. It's basically a phone that doesn't have the internet, but it looks like a smartphone, does group messaging, maps, you can even download music and things like this on it. And then I'd say in a year or two, we'll get her a smartphone. But even when we get a smartphone, and let's say you disagree with me and your child's 10 and you're willing to give them a smartphone and you're going to do it anyway, here's what I think you could do. There's really good settings on iPhone that enable you to block a lot of the bad stuff. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of it. You could look it up yourself. It's certainly worth doing. You could go to an Apple store. So I have like a family profile with Apple where I'm the parent and I get to regulate my son, let's say, who is 16 and does have a smartphone. I can block his app store. I can set downtime. So my son, his phone will start working at 10:30 a.m. every day. And because it's the summer, it'll stop at around 10 p.m. But he can't access the internet. I'll talk more about that in Q&A if you want to. I don't want to get bogged down in it because there's a lot to be said. But just to point out that it's worth your time looking into it. Here's a mantra for you as a parent. If I'm not willing to monitor it, I will not provide it. I think that's good. So if you're going to let your child have a Switch or an Xbox or a tablet or a phone or a desktop, whatever, if I'm not willing to monitor it, I will not provide it. I mean, unless you disagree with me. I think another good thing to ask yourself is this. How many devices do you have in your house right now that can access porn? Like, give me a number. Like, how many? I don't know. I'm not actually asking you, but think about it. How many devices? Like the old phone that you don't think has been charged in 2 years that lays in that third drawer amidst all the clutter? Like, does that exist? Why? Why haven't you smashed that? Why do you need that? That's a good question to ask because these are the different portals through which a child can look at pornography. I'll mention one other thing, and that is an excellent app and program called Covenant Eyes. Covenant permanenteyes.com is a way for you to monitor where your children go online. It can send you accountability reports of where your children have been online. So it doesn't only block the bad stuff, it gives you emails about where they've gone online and whether they've gone to any problematic sites. And this enables you to have an ongoing conversation with your children about their internet use. And I really do think that that is the biggest thing. It's this ongoing journeying and conversation about how to navigate the internet landscape. We expect a report of our children's offline behavior. You know, show me your school grades. Or if your son or daughter says, I'm going to go to a friend's house, you say, okay, who and what will you be doing? We're going to see a movie. What movie are you? We expect an account of their offline activities. It's insane that we wouldn't expect an account of their online activities. I think we have this false idea, me included, that what happens online is somehow less real than what happens offline. But this is false, and we should stop thinking like this. So I do think we should want an account of our children's online behavior, and that's what covenanteyes.com can do for you. Certainly there are other excellent websites and programs that you may be aware of, but that's the only one. I'll just drop that one for now. All right. Fifth, our children are only as safe as the places they spend their time. So I do think, I don't know what Hungary is like, obviously. I showed up yesterday. It seems great, but I don't know. I understand that homeschooling isn't a thing in this country, which not here to judge. But in America, well, in America, I'm not saying it's the same here, but in America, I would rather be run over by a bus than send my child to a public school, and even some Catholic schools. Not all, there's some good Catholic schools as well. And so we educate our children at home, and we know of several other families that do, and we interact with them, and we do all sorts of experiments and excursions and things like this. But the point is, we're trying to surround ourselves with families who also agree with us about using technology. So my daughter, my daughter who's 16 years old, her best friends come from families who also haven't given their children smartphones, so they don't feel like a leper. So I would say to the best you can, find families like that and hang out with them. If your children goes to a Catholic school or a public school, you better be, I'd say, bloody aware of what they can and can't see while they're here. And certainly if you had options to send your child to a screenless school, I think that would be a good thing to do. All right, finally, as I mentioned, I don't, and I'd like to get into this in the Q&A. I'm going to wrap up now. If pornography wasn't a thing, I still wouldn't let my children who are young have easy access to the internet, because I just think we all know the goods it provides, obviously. Pints with Aquinas, hello. I get the irony. It's not lost on me. And yet, there's just so much rubbish. And you know this. So let me just sort of end with this kind of idea, which you may have heard if you've listened to my podcast before. When I was a child, up until the age of 16, if you wanted to get a hold of me, you had 3 options, and only 3 options. You could call the phone that was bolted into my kitchen wall, which did not have an answering machine, and which my parents repeatedly took off the hook. It was very awkward having conversations with girls while my mum was making dinner at 1 p.m. for some reason, you know. So you could do that. You could write me a letter and mail it to me. Or, since we didn't have a fax machine, you could come and find me. That was it. And now there are a plethora of ways that people have access to you through the millions of social media accounts you might have, through the DMs, through responses to photos or videos that you might post, WhatsApp and text messaging with that little demonic delivered or seen sign that makes you feel obligated to respond to them for some reason. Now we text people as if we're in the same room as them. And like I said to you, hi. And if you don't go, hi, I'd be offended. But we text like that now. Hi, I saw the 2 blue check marks. You haven't said hi back. I'm very offended. we shouldn't be living like this. You know, this isn't helpful, I don't think. Maybe you have more self-control than I do, but I still, I don't know. I don't think you do. Maybe. I think my wife thinks she does, but I disagree. I think, so a couple of years ago, I just started getting burnt out on this. I'm like, I feel like there's pressure to respond all the time. I keep like refreshing YouTube like it's a lottery game where I sometimes see things that excite me or that work, and so I keep going back. I keep refreshing my email. You know, that terrible experience of bouncing around from one app to the other, to the other, to the other. What am I doing with my life? No, you don't have this experience. It's just me. I remember one night I was laying in a hotel bed and I was watching The Office and going, that was the extent of my laughter, because it is quite funny, I suppose. But then I opened up another window and I was scrolling Twitter, getting angry, because that's what people do on X. And then while I was doing that, I think I stopped and I was texting someone because I got a text, right? So I'm listening to The Office, not looking at Twitter, texting somebody, and I'm like, this is not good. This is not how I want to live my life. And so I started doing this thing where on the weekends, again, because I'm aware of my lack of self-control, I would put all of my electronics into a bag, my laptop, my iPhone, and I would zip it up and I would give it to a friend on like Friday. I'm like, I'm going to come get this on Monday morning. If I come before, I need you to mock me mercilessly. He's like, oh, I would love to do that. So yeah. So I'd drop it off and I would back out of his driveway, and there was one time I reached for my pocket because I had a brilliant thing that the world desperately needed to hear now. Only it really, really didn't, and calm down. And I would go off and I was very anxious for the night, you know. It's like if you lost an arm, I imagine, and you immediately keep trying to use it and wondering what's happening. But then over the course of the weekend, my mind would begin to slow down, sort of like those oscillating or those rotating fans. And then you yank the cord out of the wall and it slows gradually. That's what happened to my mind. And I realized that days could be long and leisurely, like they were when we were children. They really can still be like that. But we just fill them with so much stuff that we don't have that opportunity. And then what I began doing is going, a weekend wasn't enough. And so I started giving up the internet in August. And I'm blessed to have this. Well, see, I say that, but I mean, I do run a YouTube channel. So like, if anyone's got an excuse, that's an excuse, isn't it? But what I would do is I would record, I'd do a ton of work in July, a lot of episodes recorded. I have employees who kind of get things out. And then on the last day of July, I would give my phone and my computer and everything to a friend and say, give it back to me September 1st. And it was just magnificent. So anyway, I'm just going to leave that there on you. You don't have to do that. But I just wanted to throw that out there because in the Q&A time, I think it would be nice not only to talk about pornography, which we can, but also just how the internet might affect us negatively. I get that it's positive as well. But you already know that, so I'm not going to talk about that. And so we could interact that way as well. God bless you. I hope something I said tonight was a help. Thank you.